In today's activity, you're going to play a game called Lizard Island. Lizard Island is a real island off the coast of Florida. It's an actual place. This is a true story. Like I said before, some green anoles were living on the island when the brown anoles arrived. We're going to play this game to see what happens to the green anoles when the brown anoles are introduced. But before we introduce the brown anoles, we'll need to count the sticky toe scales of the green anoles that are there. Now, if you're working alone or with a small group, use the small group.
So we're going to stop there. Because of remote learning, we aren't going to be able to play this game together. But I'm going to show you kind of what happens. And we're going to watch some of these Mystery Science videos throughout. So before the brown anoles arrived at the island, there were the green anoles. Now, some of the were great climbers. They were able to climb trees very, very fast, very, very quickly. And they were able to do it because they had a bunch of these sticky toe scales that allowed them to be able to grip onto the trees really well. The second group of green anoles, they were pretty good climbers. They had 21 sticky toe scales, and so they climbed well, but not perfectly. The last group of green anoles only had 18 sticky toe scales, and so they weren't very good at climbing trees. They could climb, but not very well. So we're going to take and we're going to record our original lizards. To keep things even, we're going to start out with the exact same number of climbers. We're going to have 6 excellent climbers, 6 good climbers, and 6 not so good climbers. Remember, this is before the brown anoles showed up. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm going to fast forward a little bit on our Mystery Science video. What happens when the brown anoles start showing up?
Okay, it's time to find out what happened to the green anoles when the brown anoles arrived. First, let's look at the group of green anoles that are the not-so-good climbers. The not-so-good climbers had a hard time getting away from the brown anoles. They just couldn't climb high enough or quickly enough. Many of them got eaten by the brown anoles. You'll find out exactly how many lizards in your class got eaten in just a minute. But let's find out about the other lizards too. What about the group of green anoles that are the good climbers? Well, they were better at getting away from the brown anoles, but a few still got caught. Okay, and what about the group of excellent climbers? They climbed high and fast, and almost all of them got away. Okay, so let's get back to the game and see what this does to our graph.
So we're back in our game now, and we have all of our green anoles. Now, when the brown anoles showed up, they were hungry, and they wanted to eat. And it was easiest for them to eat the climbers that didn't go so fast and didn't get up the trees. So of our poor, not-so-great climbers, all but 2 of them got eaten, and only 2 were left. Of our good climbers, 3 of them got eaten, and 3 were left. Of our excellent climbers, only 1 of them got eaten. He got caught by surprise, and he wasn't expecting it. So now, this is who we have left of our population. So now that we have our baby lizards, we can say, okay, we had 2 excellent climbers, new pencil, 5 excellent climbers, 3 good climbers, and only 2 not so good climbers. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. We can already see that our graph is changing. Now, each of these went on to have a second generation. They survived. They get to have children. So they all paired up. And you have all these different groups of anoles. And all these groups of anoles are together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, okay, sorry. I had a moment where I wasn't quite sure if I'd lost some anoles. Now, each of these anoles is going to have children that are like them. But you can only have the genes of your two combined parents. So right here, we've got a good climber who is going to be with an excellent climber, a good climber with an excellent climber. And when these two have babies, they're going to have between 21 and 26 different toe scales. The easiest way to figure out how many toe scales their children would have is to take 21 plus 26 and divide it by 2. For the sake of time, I've done this math. These two together would end up having 23 scales. And 23 scales means that they're going to be an excellent climber. Here I've got a good climber and a not so good climber. And they would end up having 19 toe scales. So this pair is only going to be a good climber. Here we've got a not so good climber and a good climber. Those two would end up having good climbers. And so in the end, they would have children. Our good, excellent climber and our excellent climber, they're going to have an excellent climber child. And here, our good and our excellent climber are again going to have a excellent climber. So we can already see here that something has happened with our not so good climbers. They're all gone. So our next generation is going to look like this. And we're going to say that each of these pairs has 2 children. That way we keep the same amount. So we're going to have 2 excellent climbers out of our first pair, 2 good climbers out of our second pair. We're going to have another 2 good climbers out of our third pair, 2 excellent climbers, and 2 more excellent climbers. If we come back to our graph that we were working on, we can see that we have a quite different map. Now, we have no not so good climbers. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 good climbers, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 excellent climbers. So down here on our chart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. And no, not so good climbers. So we have fewer overall because some of them got eaten, and more of these excellent climbers. Now, as we go on and we say, okay, the brown anoles are still there. They're still eating things. We're going to lose a couple of our not so great, or sorry, there are good and are excellent climbers. But once again, these guys are going to get all together and they're going to have some children. So here, these 2 we know are going to end up having excellent children. So these 2 will have excellent children. these two are going to have excellent climbing children. And these two are going to end up having excellent climbing children. And what we see is that over time, our good climbers and our not so good climbers are eventually going to disappear because they get eaten by all of the brown anoles. And that leaves us with no more brown anoles. So let's go and finish off our video.
The invasion of brown anoles on Lizard Island has caused our groups of green anoles to change. More green anoles now have more sticky toe scales than many of them did before. All of this has been a lot like selection. Remember when the ancient Chinese royalty wanted tiny dogs? How did they get them? They chose the smallest dog they could find to be a mother, and then for the father, they chose the smallest dog as well. And so those two smaller dogs had small puppies. Then the ancient Chinese royalty raised these puppies and took the smallest boy dog to be a father and the smallest girl dog to be a mother. And the puppies from those dogs were sometimes even smaller. So after many generations, the baby dogs being born were now much smaller than the original medium-sized wolf dog. Well, back on Lizard Island, there were no people selecting which green lizards would be allowed to have babies. And yet there was a kind of selection going on, wasn't there? The brown lizards did the selecting. Now, unlike human beings, the brown lizards weren't aware they were doing any selecting, but they were doing selection. They ate the green lizards that were not so good climbers, because those were the ones they could catch. But the brown lizards couldn't catch all of the excellent climbers and good climbers. So those lizards were able to have babies. And since babies tend to be like their parents, those babies had lots of sticky toe scales. So the green anoles have changed because of the brown anoles. Before the brown anoles came along, the green anoles spent more time on the ground, and only some of the green anoles were excellent climbers. But after the brown anoles invaded, now, because they've eaten up all the not-so-good climbers, a lot of the green anoles are good or excellent at climbing, because they're the ones able to have babies. Now, here's something that may surprise you. Lizard Island is a real place located in Mosquito Lagoon in Florida in the United States. And it's loaded with green anoles and brown anoles. As we said, green anoles already lived in Florida. The brown anoles first showed up in Florida back around the 1940s. They're originally from the country of Cuba, but a few of them hitched a ride to Florida on cargo boats, which is how they get from one piece of land to another, such as on an island. They ride on boats. So these big brown lizards, they made themselves at home in Florida. Scientists saw that the brown anoles were taking over places where the green anoles lived, and they worried about the green anoles. Would the brown anoles eat all the green ones? Or maybe would the brown anoles eat up all the bugs, leaving the green anoles to starve? One of the scientists who wanted to find out the answers to these questions was this guy, Todd Campbell. He knew that there were a few islands in Mosquito Lagoon where only green lizards lived. This allowed him to see exactly what would happen if he let the brown lizard invade. Because these lizards don't like to swim across the water, an island acts like a cage, keeping the lizards in one place for scientists to study them. Here's a picture of the two scientists who studied the lizards of Lizard Island. They're boating from one island to the next, ready to catch lizards and count their toe scales, just as you did.